As I always say, it's pretty easy to get under Donald Trump's skin, but to live rent-free in his head, that takes a little extra bit of work, and Rachel Maddow has clearly attained a lot of that real estate, and we saw that last night because after her show aired, Donald Trump took those tiny little fingers of his to Truth Social to absolutely melt down in an incredibly angry and strange, or I guess really not that strange for Donald Trump, but for anyone else it certainly would be, post that we are going to get into. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, of course, before we can get into Donald Trump's post, we had to hear what Maddow was breaking down, and that is some news that has Donald Trump furious.
As we covered at the top of last night's show, Harvard University is the first university in the United States to just flatly and publicly refuse to capitulate to the Trump administration's blitzkrieg against academia. Trump has been threatening to weaponize federal funding against any college or university that won't roll over and let him essentially take over the administration of the school and even its academic curriculum. He's thus far canceled or frozen funding to 6 of the 8 schools in the Ivy League and 1 school in the Big Ten. Columbia was the first school that Trump targeted. Columbia obviously made some concessions and therefore sort of set its fate in motion. But Harvard is just saying no. And that may totally change the dynamic here, not just in terms of whether Harvard actually manages to win their own fight against what Trump's trying to do, but also I think a lot of people are hoping that this might put steel in some other institutions' spines, that they ought to be fighting back too. Now, in terms of the colleges and universities, Trump may have been going after the Ivies first, but him doing that has afforded other colleges the chance to sort of get their act together, to figure out what they're going to do before he inevitably comes for them. And we're seeing the results of some of that right now, interestingly, in the Big Ten. Started at Rutgers in New Jersey in late March. The university's Senate passed a resolution to band together with the other members of the Big Ten against what Trump is doing. The resolution calls for establishing a mutual defense compact, which in part calls for participating institutions to make available at the rest of the institution under direct political infringement the services of their legal counsel, governance experts, and public affairs offices to coordinate a unified and vigorous response. Then we saw the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, their faculty senate, voting to adopt the same resolution. And then so did the faculty council at Indiana University at Bloomington. So that's 3 of the Big Ten schools, which, not to confuse things, but even though they're called the Big Ten, it currently consists of 18 schools. Joining them is UMass Amherst, which is not a Big Ten school, but they're applying that same concept to call for a public and land-grant university mutual academic defense compact. So we've got Harvard leading on their own after almost all the other Ivies were targeted, right? Now we've got the other institutions, the other higher education institutions in the country who know that Trump is coming for them, realizing that you can see it coming, and the way to do it is not to fight on your own, to be prepared and to get organized and to make sure you're not fighting alone. I mean, fighting authoritarianism 101 says don't fight alone. Whether you organize, along athletic conferences or academic rivalries or being a bunch of colleges along the same interstate, whatever organizing principle you choose, get together. Do not fight alone and be ready before they come for you.
I talked about this when we covered the news of Harvard and potentially other institutions, as Maddow pointed out, standing up to Trump as one of the most important turning points we have seen so far. That for too long before and during his presidency, we saw the corporate class with CEOs, capitulating to Trump or really honestly buddying up to him and trying to join the inner sanctum of CEOs and billionaires. We've seen the corporate media bend the knee to Donald Trump, settling up with him on lawsuits they certainly could have won, and universities, including mine, doing the same, telling Donald Trump essentially that he can run their colleges because they're scared. But that is now changing as public opinion does as well. And public opinion around the Trump presidency hasn't been positive since about week 1. It's the reason I have been calling for more Democrats to step up and depose Donald Trump as loudly and unapologetically as possible, because the wind was behind them. And now we're seeing that with the moves of big institutions recognizing not only should they not be bending the knee to Donald Trump, but it is actually beneficial for them to stand up to him. And he is not happy about that, or the reporting clearly from Rachel Maddow, because he had to say this on Truth Social. Trump wrote, "Wow, fake news MSNBC has really bad ratings. In fact, not much better than the broken broadcasting disaster known as CNN. Comcast, which is also the ailing network known as NBC, is trying to stay away from lawsuits by disassociating NBC from MSNBC, but it won't work. Comcast, the owner of both, and its chairman, Brian Roberts, are a disgrace to the integrity of broadcasting." Now, we know that Donald Trump is using lawsuits to try to intimidate media organizations, many of which have bent the knee, have given him personal donations, or those to his presidential library, which I've never understood how Trump is going to have a presidential library if he can't read, but that's neither here nor there. But of course, the FCC as well, Donald Trump using the government to intimidate. But the worst thing is not when he carries out these lawsuits. The worst thing is not when he goes forward with taking punitive action by nature of the executive branch. The worst thing is when these media outlets pre-capitulate, when out of fear of what Trump might do, they do what he wants. What is so important is to let it get to that point, to force Trump's hand, to actually make him do the thing that he is threatening, that he is holding over you. Then you can fight back. And as I've said before, these big institutions will soon realize that while Donald Trump has the power of courts that he either will force to do what he wants or not listen to, the court of public opinion is in favor of opposing Donald Trump. He has never been this unpopular. His presidency is a disaster. He has failed at the only thing he was, elected to do, because he wasn't elected to do it, because he was never going to do it, but he claimed that he was elected to do, which is lower prices. People are furious on everything, and that includes an issue that he thought was his safe space in immigration. Just listen to Maddow talk about how poorly it is all turning out for him in the disgusting deportation of Abrego Garcia.
Exactly 1 month ago, the Trump administration abducted and imprisoned a Maryland man named Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They flew him and hundreds of other men to a prison in El Salvador. The government has since called imprisoning Mr. Abrego Garcia, at least, a mistake. 5 days ago, the Supreme Court, in a unanimous 9-0 decision, ordered the Trump administration that they needed to bring him back. They needed to, quote, facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's return to the U.S. Well, they haven't done so yet. And today in court, a federal judge in Maryland just excoriated Trump administration lawyers over the administration's refusal to comply with that order, the administration's refusal to go get Mr. Abrego Garcia, or at least prove that they're trying to. The judge, quote, "Just so everyone knows where my current thinking is, Mr. Abrego Garcia has already won his injunctive relief. It was affirmed not only by the Fourth Circuit, but by the Supreme Court. We're here today to talk about the scope of the remedy, which means that while expeditiousness is of the utmost importance, because it is a fact now of this record that every day Mr. Abrego Garcia is detained in the prison in El Salvador, that is a day of further irreparable harm. At the same time, if not this court, then who to engage in process? It's process that is in the roots of our Constitution. So we have to give process to both sides, but we're going to move. There will be no tolerance for gamesmanship or grandstanding. We will talk about the contours of this, but that's where I am right now. At one point, the Trump administration lawyer argued about the meaning of the word facilitate, calling it a term of art within immigration law. The judge said in response, quote, "I'm not even sure what you mean, but as a factual matter, I do need evidence in this regard, because to date, what the record shows is that nothing has been done. Nothing. I've asked for daily reports, daily, by individuals with personal knowledge, and I've gotten very little information of any value." Trump administration lawyer: "Your Honor, I think what we have submitted reflects that there have been significant steps. In particular, we cited to this issue was raised at the highest possible level. We cited to this issue was raised at the highest possible levels yesterday. It was raised in the Oval Office between two heads of state, between the President of the United States and the President of El Salvador. The issue was specifically discussed." The judge: "A reporter asked a question. The defendants have never responded to the question, what steps have you taken? The plaintiff is asking, why don't the defendants just ask, you will release him? I've got no answer on that. And in response to this notion that what happened in the Oval Office is satisfactory, that's not before the court. I mean, you include a transcript. I don't know if what this transcript is supposed to be assisting me in. But the bottom line is, it was a very simple directive. My question that the high court squarely affirmed, I can ask, what have you done? I've got nothing. I've got no real response, nor have I gotten any legitimate legal justification for not answering the question. That's why we need to move to the next step. Because in fairness, if you're not going to answer the questions that the plaintiffs put within the scope of my order, then you will justify why. You will cite privilege, you'll follow the rules, I will make a determination. That is what we do in this House.
Now, while of course the most loyal MAGA diehards will always support Donald Trump, we see that the polling reflects what our expectation would be if Donald Trump ever opposed a decision, especially a 9-0 ruling from the Supreme Court. As AOC always says, and I continue to bring up on this show because I think it's so important, this idea that Donald Trump's immigration plan is somehow popular has always been a farce. It was only popular in our minds because we didn't work hard enough to make it unpopular. And now Donald Trump is essentially doing that for us. I've talked about this again and again. We have to stop message testing human rights. We have to stop focus grouping the fundamental values of our country. We know what is right and wrong. Don't be afraid to say it. Senator Von Hollen of Maryland right now is traveling to El Salvador. He is putting himself in harm's way. I am terrified for his safety. That is the type of fight that we need right now. That is the type of fight that people want to see right now, that they expect to see right now, and that they should expect to see right now. It's the reason why these big institutions should not be bending the knee to Donald Trump. They don't need to. Especially universities with tens of billions of dollars in their endowments. What is that money for, if not a situation right now? And why aren't you banding together? This is Rachel Maddow was talking about. This is a moment for unity against this regime, and that comes in all forms. But it is, in many ways, contingent upon us, the public, unfortunately having to lead the way for the institutions that claim to be these bastions of liberalism and freedom, universities that are not standing up for their own students or the values they espouse because they're more worried about their funding. But if they realize it is in their best interest to oppose Trump, because they see us turn out, because they see us protest, we're going to win. I hate that this is always on us, but it kind of is. And so we have to keep getting out there, fighting, and using our voices and our agency that matters so much. And we're certainly doing so on this show. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.